welcome to another episode of Inside the Recording Studio. I am Jody Whitesides, and with me as always is Mr. Chris Hellstrom. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing very well, Jody. What the hell was that?
I don't know. I was trying to be weird, and I did not succeed.
I think you succeeded because I see you on camera, so well done. But no, I'm good. How are you, man?
I am sleepy at the moment. It was not a lot of sleep last night and very early morning, so I hope my brain will function properly for this.
Well, for this episode, you're going to need your brain because today we're talking about the Mark II version of the Eventide H3000, the factory plugin, not the delay one. I'm very excited about this. We were both kind of like harping on this before. We actually did an episode on the hardware unit, and we mentioned the plugin.
Yes.
And how we've also given it a hard time because of the interface and the way it looked. But this is an updated version.
They did some other things like breaking it up into two different plugins, which it still is, unfortunately. However, things have improved.
Most definitely, at least to me. I suppose we should start with the obvious, like the updated GUI.
Yes.
Right? And it sounds really shallow to kind of say that, oh, the GUI, yeah, whatever. But
it does make a difference. It looks better and it functions better now. It functions similarly. It is smoother, easier to deal with is a better way of saying it in terms of the GUI.
Yeah, it is a very, very much improved. And it's actually a pleasure to dig in there now.
Yes.
As opposed to the monstrosity of V1, I almost said, and I guess I did. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, for people that are unaware of what the H3000 was and still is, it's not a 3000 anymore in the current version of the hardware unit, but why do we need a plugin of this piece of hardware? Because it is an emulation.
I don't know why people would need a plugin of it. However, the H3000, in terms of this particular plugin, is a recreation of the old Eventide H3000 hardware multi-effect unit. For those that didn't have one, namely myself and your...
Yeah, I didn't have one either. That was way outside of my budget.
These things cost ridiculous amounts, but they could also do ridiculous things in terms of twisting and turning and manipulating audio in a digital sense. What a lot of people use it for was guitar effects, as it was a very capable and very deep multi-effects processor.
Yeah. As guitar players, we tend to think of it, I think, as primarily a guitar thing, but that's not necessarily true. That's kind of selling it short. It certainly came on my radar with players like Steve Vai, and I think Satriani had one, and it was like all over Passion and Warfare of Steve Vai's release. So it was like, oh, I can do all this crazy stuff. It can do all crazy stuff, but not only crazy stuff. It does other stuff really, really well.
That it does.
Also. So it has some of these little classic tones. If we were to spend a whole episode just talking about the plugin again, we would probably be here for longer than anybody would care to listen. So I think what we'll do is I would kind of break it down into a few things that we like about the update and what we like about the plugin. So I'll start, and it's something we've already mentioned. It's like the GUI. Yep. It's the first thing for me. It's like it's so much easier to work with. You don't have to squint, because one thing, and I think you're going to mention it as well, it's actually scalable.
Yes.
So if you're like me and you're getting up there and your eyes are not working as well as they used to, you don't have to have a magnifying glass to work with it anymore. That was a big thing for me.
Along the similar lines, the new GUI is easier on the eyes, and not for aged eyes, to the sense of the old plugin, the interface one wasn't scalable. Two, the graphics that they used they weren't sharp.
No, I mean, it was very indicative of the time
yes.
when it came out. And it showed its age just in the GUI. Even if it sounded great, which it did, it was a little bit intimidating to kind of dig into as well because of the GUI, I think.
Yes.
The most important thing about the plugin is the sound, right? There's a boatload of presets and stuff in here. There's a couple of things that for me is sort of indicative of what it does really, really well. That is the pitch shifting, specifically the micro pitch shift. And there's a couple of presets in there that are still there, and they were in the original unit. They're called micro pitch shift. It's the dual 910s, which is another Eventide box, right? Mm-hmm. And a variation of that called the micro pitch slap. And all of those are glorious to me because it gives me that
80s really, vibe.
Yeah, it's that sort of clean session tone, and it makes it kind of big and lush. Mm-hmm. I can't help it. That's a kind of the epitome to me of like guitar tones from what I like. It was like all those session players at that era that they used it. And it just sounds great. And I mean, you hear a lot of like talking about the 80s and are very in vogue at this moment, or at least when we're recording this. So a lot of these tones are coming back, and nobody could be happier than me because I like all that stuff.
Well, I just used this on a couple of mixes that I was doing in the past week and a half.
Yeah.
I just immediately put it back to use. It was like, oh, this is a really nice sound. Let's use this one.
Yeah. So when you did that, were you going for more of a conservative thing and pulling up some presets? Did you roll your own, or did you just go for some like really out there kind of stuff? Because it does excel at that as well. It's not always appropriate, but it's really good at doing mind-bending things to your audio, or ear-bending things. I don't know.
I used it in several different functions in several different song mixes. Some were a little bit more straightforward, where it was pretty much treating it like a delay unit mm-hmm. with slight pitch shifting a little bit. And I would pull up a preset, something that was close, and then I would tweak to taste, which is generally what I tend to do anyway, no matter what plugin I'm using. It's generally not just pull up a preset and go. It's pull up a preset, mess around with it for a moment to make it do what I would like it to do, and then go. So I used it both for simple delay things and massive mind-bending craziness as well.
Yeah.
But not in the same song.
Yeah. Guitar primarily or what?
Vocals and guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. What's that movie with Jodie Foster where she actually uses Contact, when she uses an Eventide box to actually contact aliens?
Yeah, and there it
is. Beware when you're using it that you don't do that.
Right.
That would be very unfortunate, or fortunate, depending on your point of view. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you mentioned the going in and actually tweaking presets. There's something that is kind of rare, I think, that when you just pull up a preset, that it's like, oh, this is perfect. Like, I don't need to do anything, mm-hmm. right? Because it's usually something that you need to tweak, is something that you don't like it, because presets are generally there to show you what the piece of software can do.
Or the hardware.
And sometimes that can be a little bit too much of what it is that you might need, right?
Yeah.
But this is going to sound like such a sales pitch, but I really mean it. With a lot of the Eventide stuff, certainly with the H3000 and also from the H9 series mm-hmm. plugins, there are a lot of those where you just pull up a preset and say, yeah, that's perfect. That's great. I mean, things that we've talked about before, like the Tristar chorus, for example.
Good Lord, that thing just sounds great, just throwing it on without even touching it. Just throw it up and bang, you're done. It's crazy.
Yeah. There are a couple of cases where that happens, but I'm with you there that a lot of times I like to get my fingers dirty and tweak stuff to kind of get what it is that you want. Mm-hmm. If you are so inclined, you are probably going to enjoy working with the Mark II, well, the Mark I as well, but we're talking about the Mark II today of the H3000, because immense tweakability. If you haven't worked with it, I think the best way to kind of think about it is it's almost like working with a modular synth.
Yeah.
Because you have these building blocks or functional blocks that you then patch, like with virtual cables, right, in whatever order and stuff that you want them.
And for those that are familiar with Propeller Head's reason, the patch bay, so to speak, of these blocks for effects and the inputs and the outputs feel a little bit like that. They did in the first version, but they felt clunky. These are much smoother now. They don't do the nice sway and swing like the Reason propeller heads did, but
that was a really cool thing. When
it was. It was like treating it like an actual cable. These are much smoother feeling than the Mark I, which is a nice update. It just feels nice when you're moving things around or trying to patch things in there.
Yeah, and one thing that I like as well is as you're patching in this modular system, if you will, things can start getting messy quickly visually because you could have cables going all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that they're color-coded as well. So it's like left and right have a different color. And also if it's just like a modulation thing, you'll have a different color. So it makes that tweakability a little bit cleaner as well, as opposed to if everything was the same color. It would just be like, what's going on here? Look at plate of spaghetti, right? That tweakability is, I would say, both a strength and possibly a downside to it, because I think if you get intimidated by that, which is very easy to do if you're not really sure of how it works, looking at that, it's like, I'm not getting into this. Right?
Yeah, it can be pretty daunting if you open up the bottom end of the plugin where you get to these inputs, the effects blocks, and the outputs. The nice thing is you don't have to do that. You can just pull up a preset and you don't see any of that, and you can just say, oh, that sounds awesome. Let's just go with this. But you hit this little tab that says expand, and all of a sudden your world suddenly goes...
Yeah, it's tweakability galore.
Yes.
So it is very intimidating for some, but it also, if you're one of those people that like to go in there and tweak, it's like, oh, it's Christmas morning, right? We're going to see what we can do. One thing that I wanted to touch on too with this release that I appreciated a lot, it was not present in the first version. They have these presets that are building block patches. What that does is it might be a delay patch, a delay block. You load that in, and it's basically just a delay, and it shows how that is routed in the plugin. I think that's a genius move because not only do you have a preset right there, but it also is a great way to kind of wrap your head around how the patching work and why you might do it a certain way. Because there are noise generators and LFOs in there, and there's things that sound like there would be something, but they're really not. And we talked about that. It's just a scalar module that they have. And, you know, being musicians, like, oh, I just set the scale. But no, you're actually scaling values and things. But seeing how all of those work is a great way to kind of wrap your head around the plugin and how you can then go in and patch in and do more advanced presets should you need to.
I agree.
That was one of the biggest takeaways for me, actually, when I saw that. I'm like, oh, this is awesome, because now instead of just reading about these things in the manual, you actually see it and you hear it, and you can simply just go ahead and disconnect the cables and see what that does. So you say, oh, and now I lost that functionality and blah, blah, blah. You mentioned the expert tab and all that kind of functionality that you have when you just see everything laid out. So if you get an anxiety attack of looking at all the values that are present for each parameter, you don't have to look at that. But having just that sort of like a patch bay there, I think is a great way to go.
Yeah. The odd thing is that in the mkII version of the H3000 plugin, I didn't feel like the factory version was as useful as the band delay version, because they separate out the functionality between the two.
Yeah.
What's odd is I now find in the Mark II version, the factory half to be much more useful to me than the band delay version.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know why that is. I don't know.
Well, the band delay version, I think, is if you want these super long and rhythmic delays.
Mm-hmm.
You now have, what is it, like 8 delay lines, I think, that you have? Possibly more. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Well, we're also not talking about that particular plugin today, too.
This is true. But if you're feeling like a limitation in the factory from the delay line, because you can't do super long delays in it.
That's true. That is true.
So if you're going for that kind of lush sound, it is a great companion to have.
Mm-hmm.
Just from my taste, again, like all the micro pitch stuff that you can just get with it present here is worth the price of admission, as you say. Not saying that there aren't alternatives to that, but that is a great functionality and a great sound to me.
In terms of this Mark II update to the plugin, compared to version 1, Eventide has put a large number of new presets in there. Obviously, it doesn't contain the entire shipping boat of the original H3000 unit, which is still going to probably bum some people out. However, they have added a whole lot more presets that you can now flip through, try out, see what they sound like, and then play with.
Yeah, and it's also nice that they categorized into different type of categories that presets belong to, right? So you have delay categories, you got pitch and flanging and all this kind of stuff as well. So there are a lot, but easy to find something. One thing that I think can both be good and bad, and it depends on your workflow and what it is that you're doing. A lot of what it can do as well is very sound designy.
Yes.
Right? So there's a lot of things, and I'm not sure if it was sort of like a thing from working with Steve Vai, because if anybody that listened to this has heard some of the songs on Passion and Warfare, where it's just effects galore, right? There's like this underwater swirly kind of sounds and things.
Shouldn't it just be the H3000 Galore album?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's primarily what it is.
Right. Never mind Steve's playing on it. It is out there in certain cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to think of this as, we mentioned off the top, or I did anyway, it's like it's not just a guitar box. So if you're doing like soundscapey type of stuff, think of it as something, it's a modular rack that you can just run your synth through, right? And sure, there's not oscillators and things like that, but all the effects and things that you can get from it with pitch shifting and modulation and all this kind of stuff.
Envelope filters, filters, LFO filters. It's crazy, plus the delay units and everything that are in there. And there's even an amp mod or two, is what they call it.
Yeah.
Which was in the original version now, but
right, but that, again, is like, sounds like a little bit of a misnomer, because it's like, oh, what is it? It's got like a Marshall or Vox. No, it's an amplitude thing, right? So it's a volume level thing. If you think about actually what creates all these effects, it's essentially tweaking time, as in delay, and filters and stuff that are happening and reacting in time, so that we get flanging and tremolos and all those kind of effects, and that's in there, so you can actually do all those things if you dig in.
Yes, and to kind of just explain that for a moment, there are 18 of these effects blocks that we're talking about, with pitch shifting, delays, filters, modulations of all kinds. You are allowed to move those around in any order that you want. It doesn't really matter which order you put them in, but it might make the cabling look like a giant spaghetti mess if you don't.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. I like that you can do that, because you can easier follow the signal path or the tweakability path. So that is a welcome thing that we have now as well. And it's possible that was available.
It was available in version 1. It just felt clunky in moving them around. Yeah. Now it feels very smooth and finessed.
Almost like 2024.
Yes.
Do you think this is for everyone, Jody?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I think anybody could find something useful in it, but it's certainly a multi-effects processor that is geared towards people that love to tweak.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that you can do with this. We're talking primarily about like the blocks that can be used in creating a sound. We're not even scratching the surface, which we're going to have to do in another episode at some point, of dealing with how to use the soft keys and the mod wheel and other functionalities that are in the interface beyond just the effects blocks.
Yeah, because that can make it a smoother experience when you're just tweaking. You don't have to go in and like in-depth and expert mode to kind of tweak the delay time. You know, you can set it up and essentially customize the GUI controls to a way that works for you. And it's essentially just like a macro knob, right? But it looks like the unit and the way the hardware unit works. So if you're familiar with that workflow, that is pretty cool. But yes, that would garner a whole new episode just talking about that. Now, what about different alternatives to this, do you think? As far as like if you're, because it's not altogether cheap plugin compared to the actual unit. It's like, what is it? Like
grand savings if you're talking about the hardware unit. Yes.
Right.
However, it is still a fairly pricey plugin.
You know, we're talking about $200 a piece if you're talking about the band delays as well, right? And there, I believe you can combine them as well. But if it's just something that you're curious about, that might sort of scare some people. It is $200, and if you do this for any amount, you know, it's not the end of the world. There are alternatives out there that do at least
certain functionality to portions of this unit. And the first one that comes to mind for me is the Eventide H9 series plugins.
Yeah,
because quite a few of those plugins are all just portions of the H3000 stuck into a singular unit, so to speak.
Yeah. Right. And all of those, as we've mentioned before, that to me, they all sound great. You know, they get a lot of use from me, especially with guitar, but not only just guitar, but they are really, really great sounding units. Another alternative is from Sound Toys. They have their micro pitch, which does, again, that pitch shifting, not with exactly the same type of tweakability. If you're just wanting that sound, that's another option, right? You're the head UA guy here, so there's another UA thing there as well.
Yeah, there's a universal audio version of the H910, which is, again, a portion of what the H3000 was. And the H910 is an Eventide unit as well that was specific to doing certain effects.
Harmonizer, yeah.
So there are portions of this box or this plugin that you can get in other alternatives.
I know I've said it several times this episode already. I would consider this just not for just guitar players. It's very easy, but you know, I can still see all the racks, like the 19-inch racks, right? With them in there. All my favorite guitar players had them. But, you know, they were often in studios as well because there is a very, very capable unit. And it sounds great, you know.
Well, like I said, I have used this on vocals as well as other instruments for some recent mixes. It's an amazing multi-effects plugin, the H3000 Mark II Factory plugin. Period. Bing. Just get it.
Thumbs up from Jody.
Thumbs up from me. Thumbs up from you. Let's move on to our Friday finds. Chris, what have you got this week?
A service that, admittedly, I have yet to try out, but it sounds really, really interesting. It's called Sound Credit. From what I understand, it's a service like if you're sharing, let's say, your mixes and things with clients and giving them for reference so that you could eventually get paid, right? You can upload to this service, and it's a very convenient thing for the client. It's almost like a streaming service. You can just go, as opposed to sending like an MP3 or whatever, right? Oh, I can't hear it, or it's in my Dropbox, whatever. This acts much like a streaming service that most people are comfortable with. So I think it's a great way to share your work with people. If they give it a yay or nay, oh, can we bring the guitars up Sosa guitars are coming up, isn't it? For mixed feedback and that kind of thing. So it's something, sound credit, and it's something that I believe I will check out at some point. What about you, Jody? What have you discovered for us?
I'm going digitally analog for the drummers out there.
Ooh.
Zildjian has been around for hundreds of years as a cymbal manufacturing company. They are now making the mkII drum kit, which is an electronic drum kit from Zildjian. What separates this from the rest of the electronic drum kit pack are the cymbals.
As you'd expect. Yeah?
As you would expect from a long time cymbal company. These are not rubber cymbals. They are metal cymbals. And when you hit them, apparently they sound a bit like the rubber versions that other people do. Just with a thwack kind of sound, but not a full-on kind of thing. The crazy thing about them is that unlike the rest of the kit, their cymbals are connected to their hardware brain via Ethernet cables. I don't understand why they wouldn't do the entire, right? It is a lot of data. I don't understand why they wouldn't do the entire kit with Ethernet cables, but they've opted to only do the cymbals and hi-hats with the Ethernet cables and these funky designed metal cymbals and hi-hats. Playing it, I've heard the audio from example playing of people playing the kit. It sounds awesome. And
I imagine that the feel would be very natural as well if you have those as opposed
with the
to
metal cymbals,
sure.
Right. And the other thing that they did, and I don't know how many other companies really do this, but I'm assuming it's because they're using the Ethernet cables that they can pull this off. If you hit the cymbal multiple times like a real drummer would, you're not going to hit it in the exact same spot. But for every spot that they have on the cymbal, they've got 3 different samples of it. And it doesn't play the same 2 ever back to back, from my understanding. Thus, it would sound very much like a real drummer smacking a real cymbal when you're playing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
While we've got your attention, we ask that you go to InsideTheRecordingStudio.com and sign up for our mailing list. You'll need to be on our email list to be eligible for future giveaways, and we'll make sure you don't miss any future episodes of this awesome podcast. Send us an email at goldstar, GOLDSTAR, at InsideTheRecordingStudio.com with the word H3000. It's really not a word, is it? With those letters and numbers, H3000. And you'll get something cool back in your inbox. If you have a topic or suggestion for Chris and I to explain in a future episode, contact us at the contact page, and we'll put it into consideration for a future episode. With that, I'll say see you next week.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one, Jody.